shocking finding. Where you did have findings, though, I mean, where we did have a couple in the unvaccinated group, you see 6 times the rate of neurodevelopmental disorders amongst the vaccinated, nearly 6 times the rate of autoimmune diseases amongst the vaccinated, and a huge array of autoimmune diseases. This study, let me say, this unpublished study is really, really shocking. The results are very, very scary. If you think this is a program that was designed to make kids healthier, if what we're seeing in the study is accurate, that program has done anything but.
To August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be to be wearing gloves, a face shield, and mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor, please bring yourself in order.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?
Okay, guys, I'm sitting down here with Del Bigtree, the man behind the ICANN Network, the Informed Choice Action Network, and the man behind Vaxed. And also, we got a new film, The Inconvenient Study. Del, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much, Ben. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. I'm super excited to be sitting down with you. You've been a man in the trenches for a long time. You've kind of been the OG in this fight in the vaccine world. Really just excited to just pick your brain about how this movie came about, the Henry Ford study. Really, the film is titled The Inconvenient Study. I did watch this here when it was released. Why don't you walk us through this film and about the Henry Ford study and how this is so inconvenient?
So, yes, it's an inconvenient study. Anyone can watch it now. Inconvenientstudy.com. We can watch it for free. It's presented by my nonprofit, Informed Consent Action Network. And as you know, I was a producer on the CBS talk show, The Doctors. So I won an Emmy Award celebrating the best that science and medicine has to offer. I consider myself a medical producer. I'm not a doctor. I don't have a medical degree. People like to point that out, but I'm a journalist and an investigator. And so I ended up leaving CBS to make a documentary called Vaxed, which a lot of people, claim ignited the medical freedom movement around the world. Of course, the center point of that film was about the MMR vaccine and autism and a fraud that took place inside of the CDC. That movie catapulted me into the center of this discussion and an investigation into vaccines. And once you piss off the pharmaceutical industry, your days in television are over. It wasn't lost on me. I knew that was going to be the case. But with Vaxed, I thought that story just seemed so important. We had 10,000 documents provided by the whistleblower, Dr. William Thompson, that backed up what was in that film. But what was interesting is while I was traveling the country with Vaxed, we were, sold out audiences, 4 shows a day, 5 days a week at least, for an entire year traveling the country. It was an absolute phenomenon. But we were pulling up through Michigan one day and with our tour, and someone reached out to me and said, I know the head of infectious disease at Henry Ford Health, which is one of the preeminent research institutions in the world. I mean, they do some of our most important drug studies and vaccine studies and water. At that point, they'd been in the middle of the Flint, Michigan water crisis, getting to what was in the water, the lead pipes that were poisoning people. So Henry Ford Health, and specifically this head of infectious disease, Dr. Marcus Zervos, was in the middle of that controversy. And what was amazing about him is he had challenged the health department, saying, you are poisoning people inside of Detroit. So he really stood up for science and medicine for the people. I was like, I'd love to meet this guy as a hero. So we sat down to dinner. This is back in 2016. And he started the dinner off with a statement that blew my mind. He actually, at first he said, I've watched Vaxxed. It's very compelling, which was nice. I mean, people like him tend to be pro-vaccine, pro-science, and they were afraid of what Vaxxed was, but not him. He said, I watched it. It's very compelling. He said, I want to state right up front, I'm very pro-vaccine. But there's something you've been saying, he said to me, Ben. He said, there's been something you've been saying as you're traveling the country. I've seen your YouTube videos and things. You keep saying that they've never done the proper science to establish that vaccines are safe. He says, obviously, I take issue with that. This is the heart of the work that I do. And I sit on the biggest databases in the world. So I went to those databases to get you the evidence so I could show it to you at this dinner. And he said, and I'm shocked that I have to sit across from you and tell you you're right. It's incredible. We've never done a placebo-based trial of any of the vaccines that are currently on the childhood schedule. Now, let's be clear, that doesn't mean they're not safe. It just means we can't say that they're safe. I said, yet you are. Yet everyone in medicine is saying they're safe. And that is not a scientific statement. He's like, yeah, you're right. And he said, but look, I don't know what I can do about it. I don't know what we're doing here. And I hadn't thought about it until that moment, Ben. But then I said, well, hold on a second. You obviously believe that vaccines are safe and effective and one of the great tools of the 20th century. I've made a movie, Vaxed, I'm touring with right now, that shows at least some kids are being severely injured by this product, and I don't think anyone knows how many. So why don't we agree to get to the bottom of this conversation? Would you ever consider doing a study at Henry Ford Health that compares the health outcomes of vaccinated children to completely unvaccinated children? Shockingly, something that has almost never been done in the world, certainly not by a major medical institution
100%.
like Henry Ford Health. And he said, yeah, I would do that study. I was like, oh, amazing. Okay, well, then let's do that.
Right.
And so that's what this film is about. It took 4 years to sort of convince him to move forward and to actually do it. By 2020, though, 4 years later, the study was finished. Only one problem, he suddenly refused to publish it, even though he promised me no matter what the outcome of the study is, I'll publish it. I'm going to follow the data where it leads me. I'd even warned him, I think it might be problematic for your career if it proves to show what I think it might show. And he says, I'm not worried about that. I'm at retirement age. So from 2020 to about 2022, I kept urging him to publish a study. He wouldn't. And so finally, I asked him if I could. Said, I'm going to be up in Detroit I'm doing a talk up there. Can I swing through? Let's get some dinner. And so we did. Only at that dinner, I wore hidden cameras and had some recording equipment with me I didn't tell him about, because I wanted an honest conversation about that study. What was in it? Why was he so afraid of it? And the heart of the film really is what he ends up saying about that study. Things like, it's a good study, it's an important study, but he admits he's afraid to publish it because he'll lose his career. It'll be the end of him.
We'll be right back after a word for our sponsor. This episode is sponsored by Ezra Healing, a leader in the emerging wellness paradigm taking shape across North America and beyond. People everywhere are recognizing that the old sick care model, quick fixes, symptom chasing, and surface level solutions simply isn't enough. Ezra Healing is a part of the shift toward truly patient-centered care that prioritizes well-being, integrity, and a do-no-harm approach. At Ezra Healing, your whole lifestyle, rhythms, and patterns are considered to better support the interconnected systems of your body. They're focused on real solutions, long-term health promotion, and prevention, an evolving grassroots movement dedicated to helping individuals and families live healthier and more resilient lives. If you're ready for a wellness experience that puts humanity first, Ezra Healing is guiding the way. To learn more, visit them at www.ezrahealing.com. And now, back to the show.
And so that's where we're at right now. This film has now been seen by tens of millions of people around the world and growing.
And I think people need to see this film. And I watched that film. I've never been so angry listening to a man speak that he's this cowardice in nature to have the cojones to even share this. I'm thankful that he brought this to the attention, but the fact that he's unwilling to share this information to get published because he's afraid of the scrutiny. I mean, this is a man that already received a lot of scrutiny during the pandemic, and now he's afraid to just publish it because he doesn't want the attention. He doesn't want the scrutiny here. But children are suffering here. I mean, this is a study that showed. I think the most prominent finding in this study was in Table 2 of the draft. It reports that several neurodevelopmental outcomes, there were no cases in the unvaccinated for ADHD, learning disabilities, intellectual disability, tics, other psychological disabilities and behavior disabilities that showed zero in the unvaccinated. I mean, a finding like that would cause a revival in the health industry.
Well, what's amazing about what you just brought up too is that technically is not really then even, there's no ratio, there's no way to get the math around the the percentages when there's a zero. So it doesn't really even appear in the final results that you're looking at. They just put like these little infinity signs saying we couldn't come up with a determination. So in many ways, it gets zeroed out, because if there was one case in the unvaccinated, then you can say one out of so many. In this case, 1 out of 2,000 was the rate. There is no rate. There's an uncalculated rate because it's a zero. What science doesn't even know what to do with that. So they kind of just don't even talk about it. But it is a shocking finding. Where you did have findings, though, I mean, where we did have a couple in the unvaccinated group, you see 6 times the rate of neurodevelopmental disorders amongst the vaccinated, nearly 6 times the rate of autoimmune diseases amongst the vaccinated, and a huge array of autoimmune diseases. This study, let me say, this unpublished study is really, really shocking. The results are very, very scary. If you think this is a program that was designed to make kids healthier, if what we're seeing in the study is accurate, that program has done anything but. But you're right. I mean, 0 cases in the unvaccinated in some of the most critical areas.
Right. We just need to rip off the Band-Aid here. I mean, this is an industry that does not profit when we are well. And the reason why it's an inconvenient study is that it's an inconvenience to the trillion-dollar industry here that's harming our children. And studies like this, movies like this, absolutely have to get out to the masses, because our children are suffering here. The data is clear. That, I always say what the seeds are to the farmer to bring a crop, vaccines are to pharma to bring disease. This is an industry that profits when we are sick, and these vaccines are causing harm. Just like in 2011, the Supreme Court stated that these vaccines are unavoidably unsafe. There is not a safe vaccine out there, and they are causing more neurological problems, autoimmune disorders than ever before. Our children are suffering. And so when is it enough, Del? Why can't we just rip all this Band-Aid? What's holding this back from getting this information out there?
Well, look, I think that's why this study was so important to me. Right. One of the issues we have is there's very little data. We have a lot of anecdotal evidence. The work that I've done since Vaxed, we toured the country. Polly Tommy, my co-producer, and I, and a team with the Vax Bus, did over 1,000 interviews of parents telling their stories of vaccine injury. And we were shocked very early on, because the film was really only about autism, that these parents were telling stories outside of autism, that things like, my baby died after a flu shot, my child was paralyzed from a Gardasil vaccine, which is one of the stories that we share in an Inconvenient Study. But as we travel the country, you see all of this injury, but mainstream medicine keeps saying, well, it's anecdotal. That's correlation, not causation. And so this movement has had a very difficult time in the scientific space, because the pharmaceutical industry and their stranglehold they have on our regulatory agencies like HHS, FDA, CDC has kept everybody from doing the obvious studies. Now, they'll tell us there's this mountain of evidence that shows that vaccines don't cause autism. We have Stanley Plotkin under oath in a deposition by Aaron Seary, our attorney, and he clearly, by the end of that, you recognize there aren't any studies that show that vaccines aren't causing autism. We have Catherine Edwards under oath. So we've broken down. I mean, Ben, I've done all the work you can do as a journalist to debunk, if you will, the statements they're making about this, this mountainous body of evidence that vaccines are safe and effective. It doesn't exist. But where we've been lacking is, how do we prove that these injuries that we're seeing are being caused by the vaccine program? That's where you can't get anyone to do the science. Certainly, Pharma is not going to fund that science. And your regulatory agencies prior to Robert Kennedy Jr. had no desire to get to the bottom of the truth, because remember, our government has been forcing this program on us. Now, whether it's nefarious or accidental, I still stay in the place, because it's an easier conversation to say somehow accidentally our government is destroying children's lives but doesn't know it. And doctors are giving vaccines because they believe it makes children safer, because they haven't done their research and they trust the CDC and HHS. And they trust the science is being done. You and I both know that science has never been done, isn't being done. There's no placebo trials that ever establish safety. They won't do studies now because they say those studies would be unethical. They have a placebo group that's not receiving an existing vaccine. So they have all these games that they play But that's why this study was so critical. When I was finally able to convince a head of infectious disease at one of the most important research centers in the world to do the study that can get to the bottom of this. If vaccines are making our children healthier, then you should be able to prove it by comparing the health outcomes of kids that got them to those that did not. And if the vaccines are causing injury, the only way we can prove that now is to do this comparative study. That's why I think we finally have a tool that is as powerful as this one is. This is the first time by a major medical institution have they handed us a tool that we can say, see, look, the vaccinated are in trouble. Their autoimmune disease rates are through the roof. And as you know, Ben, I know you've been reporting on this for the last several years. Our children, more than half of them have chronic disease.
Yes.
Back in the 1980s, that rate was only 12.8% of our children had a chronic disease, either a neurological disorder or an autoimmune disease. So whatever we're doing in this country, we have watched the greatest decline in human health, and especially children's health, ever recorded, to go from 12% to 54% chronic illness in our children in 40 years. There's no genetic explanation for that. It is clearly an environmental toxin, and we could argue all day on which ones are the worst ones. I know you hate the fluoride in the water. You hate glyphosate pesticides and herbicides on crops as much as I do. All the hormones being injected into our beef, the plastics and the bisphenols and the forever chemicals. Yes, yes, yes. But where does vaccines play into this? Is it the major contributor? Is it a catalyst among all these? Lots of science needs to be done. But what is so amazing about this study, Ben, is it does a graph at the end where it asks, where will these children that have been vaccinated be? What is their likelihood to have a chronic disease within 10 years? And it discovers that 57% of children that have been vaccinated will have a chronic disease within 10 years.
Yes.
Then when you look amongst the unvaccinated, that rate is about 17% among the unvaccinated. So take the 57 and 17%, right, this arc, this difference between the two, and then ask yourself, where are we at right now?
Right.
54% chronic disease is the problem in our country, and you kind of can come to this, at least a scientific question. It sure looks like vaccines must be the major contributor. If all you do is look at vaccines and that's what you see are the rates almost exactly like they are in our community of autoimmune and neurological disorders, it's a very, very damning study. Now, I have to say, we've received a cease and desist letter from Henry Ford Health. They are claiming it's defamation to make the statements that I'm making about, my conclusions. So I want to be clear. These are my opinions of how you read this study. They want to say that the study wasn't published, not because it's a bad, not because of the results, which are damning. They said the only reason they didn't publish this study was because the study wasn't a good study, the methodology was wrong, and the data was off. And so to that, I say, look, all I know is I sat down with your Henry Ford Health's head of infectious disease, the best and brightest you have, the guy that ran your Moderna trials for the COVID vaccine, didn't have a problem with his methodology then. You have a problem with his methodology here? Okay, odd. And then the data has an issue. It's your data. It's some of the most robust data we've ever seen. So, all that to say, Ben, we've never had a tool like this, which is a study that was done by a group and a doctor that says he's pro-vaccine. So I think you can make the assumption this study was done to prove us wrong. This study was done to prove all of those, and there's other small studies just like this, right? Vaccinated versus unvaccinated, done by Dr. Paul Thomas, that showed the same recurring results. The vaccinated are sicker. Studies done by Anthony Mawson, and I cover all this in the film, of homeschoolers, same thing. The vaccinated are sicker. So this study doesn't even sit alone now, but it sits as the only one done by a major medical institution that set out to prove the others wrong and instead prove them right. In my mind, that's the strongest science you can ever have. When your detractor sets out to prove you wrong, designs a study to prove you wrong, and then ends up coming to the same conclusion that the vaccinated are the sickest among us, Houston, I think we have a real problem. That's why I think this movie is sweeping the world. That's why the Henry Ford study is being looked at by doctors all over the world now that are really starting to say, I think we need to take a closer look at our vaccine program.
Absolutely. They're trying to protect the lie that the science is settled, and that's just a bumper sticker slogan. We all know that. I mean, the head of the science of the Henry Ford even said that he felt comfortable publishing this because he said it was sound science. It was all the data collection, and it showed they didn't like the outcome. So they're protecting that, and they're hiding it from the people in masses. This is a crime against humanity, Del. This is literally the data is showing that these children are being harmed, and they're unwilling to protect these children. They're protecting an industry, which is evil. So, I encourage people listening, share this film, get this information out to the people. This is information that needs to be heard, needs to be seen, because the health of our children, we have more chronic illness than ever before. And the children are suffering. Look at the amount of vaccines from the 80s to the 90s. I mean, and it's not slowing down. The number of vaccinations have skyrocketed, the vaccine court, everything, this whole system is so broken. I mean, I know that there was you guys talked about I think her name was Annie, this baby that died of SIDS that had 10 vaccines that finally the court system paid out after 12 years. They don't like this information coming out. They're protecting this industry because it's $1 trillion industry. I mean, when is enough, Del?
I think that as you've done such a great job putting your neck out there on this topic, so many people get censored and shut down and destroyed for venturing here because pharma is so powerful. It owns our television sets. It owns our government. I know people are like, oh, that's a big, broad statement. Let me be really clear. And what I say to my audience is, you could test this yourself. I don't want you to ever just take my word for it. Please don't just move from like one religion to another religion.
Right.
We really need to do our own homework. But 50 to 70% of all advertising on your television set is coming from pharma. But you can test it. Count the commercials. When you're watching a news anchor or a show that you like, then if the commercial breaks, don't run off and grab popcorn. Count how many ads there are from the pharmaceutical industry. See if I'm right. Does it look like it's half or more? Because if it is, then you realize that is the major funder of the program you are now watching. It's the major funder of the news that's happening on that network that you're watching, which means that news anchor that you think is going to tell you the truth. If vaccines were a problem, CNN would tell him. NBC would tell me, right? That's what we believe. But when you realize, oh my God, all those ads, that's the only money that comes into the network. That is how they get paid. So essentially, that's their boss. That's who they're working for. Every ad, that's the percentage of the paycheck that is being paid by the people you're listening to and trusting. Once you realize that, you start going, oh, well, then that makes a lot of sense that I'm not hearing why I never heard that the COVID vaccine couldn't stop transmission. They all told me it was 95% effective. If you're watching my show, The High Wire, listening to you, Ben, we knew that from the beginning. We knew it was a lie from the beginning, not because we're psychic, because we're actually sharing with our audiences the emergency use authorization, the actual FDA documents that said this vaccine wasn't even tested to see if it could stop transmission. So,
right.
I mean, we've exposed these lies, but now we're in a critical place, Ben. What are we going to do about it? We're just going to keep it to ourselves. Because one of the things I think that we've got to watch out for is that we don't end up being selfish with our information, which is, okay, I'm going to quietly take care of my kid. I'm going to make sure that they're not vaccinated. I guess you're going to move out of California because you can't go to school there or homeschool, but now they're even going after homeschools to force vaccinate. But, Ben, we have a window of time right now, a very short window that's been created by Robert Kennedy Jr. taking HHS and really having a president like President Trump that is open to exploring questions no one's been allowed to ask in our government since Pharma, started funding our government. And so that means we've got to make as much hay as we possibly can, because no matter what happens at some point, whether it's the end of this administration, maybe it extends through, I don't know, a J.D. Vance or something, and we can all hope and dream, and maybe Bobby stays on for 8 years, not 4. But I don't live in the world of wishful thinking. I live in what's possible and what I can do now. And right now, we have 3 years to wake up as many people as we can, so when we vote on issues like this, both at the state level and at the federal level, that we have the majority perspective. We have that opportunity right now. COVID woke up. I mean, Between 20 to 30% of this entire country didn't take that vaccine. That means we're already on our way to 50%. Now, 90% of people are not taking the booster. So that means the people that believed in the system are now at least partially open to our side. They're no longer trusting what the CDC is saying. So this conversation has just become easier. That's why a film like this needs to be shared with everyone you know. And if they're like, well, I don't know about vaccines, say, did you just get the COVID booster? Because if you did, you're one of the 10% that actually have missed all of the media on this.
Right.
But if you're not, this is the film that's going to help you understand this is more than just a COVID vaccine problem. This is a problem for all of our children. And Ben, if we share these tools when they come like this, I don't know I'm going to have another opportunity like this. I am doing so many podcasts and trying to get the word out because it's not since Vaxed that I saw a story that I thought was compelling and strong enough to really move hearts and minds. This one is, but it doesn't work sitting on a shelf. It doesn't work sitting in a website that you never visit. Go watch this movie. Share this movie with everyone you know so that by the time another election comes along this year, the midterms, in 3 more years when we're electing a new president or anywhere in the future in our state bodies of health, send this to your assembly members, send this film to your Senate members and say, I want an investigation into the health outcomes of vaccinated versus unvaccinated in this state, in Texas, in California. If vaccines are making us healthier while you're mandating them, prove it to me.
Yes.
And that's the position we find ourselves in now, Ben. I think we're actually in the offensive position where we get to say to them, we got the science. We have the studies. What do you have? Where's your evidence that vaccines are making our children healthier?
100%. And I think you hit the nail on the head. We have an opportunity right now to do this. I think everyone listening to this, you have an obligation here. We cannot stay complacent. We have medical tyranny at our doorstep. And if we stay complacent, if we don't be proactive in this fight, we're going to let them in the door. I mean, this is not just a COVID vaccine. This is all vaccines in general. This is a massive, evil industry that has been lying and censoring the people, censoring the truth. They're protecting their industry. And we have a crack right now in the foundation, and we need to take advantage of it. We need to get the word out about this film, about this information. This isn't just a movie. This is about the truth. This is about corruption. I mean, in the Bible, it says we need to expose the darkness, and this is what we're doing. Films like this expose that. We're getting the truth out there. And right now, we have an opportunity. The soil for truth is rich right now, and the people are starving for it. The people right now, I mean, just like you, Del, we've been carrying the torch for a long time. We've been standing in the gap before it was a cool thing, before this was before anybody knew it, when it was not easy. But we need to continue the fight because we do have an opportunity. Our works here, we're about to see the fruit of that. So I pray that we continue to make headway.
We'll be right back after a word for our sponsor. Today's episode is sponsored by Ezra Healing, a place devoted to renewal and deep-rooted well-being. Ezra Healing supports individuals and families in soothing the nervous system, releasing accumulated stress and trauma, and restoring the body's God-given ability to repair and thrive. Their method is gentle, discerning, and grounded in honoring how the body was created to function. With steady guidance, thoughtful education, and practical resources, they come alongside each person to foster safety, resilience, and whole person healing. If you're seeking a space to breathe, rebalance, and truly heal, Ezra Healing offers a powerful path forward. To learn more, visit them at www.ezrahealing.com. And now back to the show.
Del, I appreciate all the works here. Where can people see this film? Where can people, and obviously we'll put links in here, but where can put a plug in where people can see this film?
Super easy. Just go to inconvenientstudy.com. You can click on it right there. You can download it. I don't even care if you want to download it and own it and share it in your own space. Like I said, we know that tens of millions of people have seen it based on the downloads, but we don't know how far it went beyond that. People are signing up to have, screenings at theaters near them to get people out. So we're open to any part of that, but it's all free. I mean, if you want to donate, you have the opportunity there. We would really love it because it helps us, push this even further. But I just want everyone to see it. And to be clear, I'm all about transparency. One of the things that's really made me happy, Ben, is I believe that this has jump-started, reinvigorated the scientific method. There's a huge debate going on in the scientific community. What is the quality of this study? Do we trust Zervos when he says it's a good study? There are people trying to poke holes in the study, which you can do on any retrospective study. It's not the placebo-based trial that we should have gotten, but when you don't do that, you're left with retrospective studies are the best that we can do. But we have published the Henry Ford letter, everything that it's saying against our film. We published that so you can read it. And then we've even put up some of the arguments being made about the quality of the study, and we refute them with, our scientific perspective. But we want you to be a part of the dialogue. We're not afraid of the dialogue. We want this debate. We've got to have this debate now. If this isn't the perfect study, then let's make the perfect study. Let's do a bigger, better study. The CDC, HHS needs to do this study with a database of the American public. Kaiser Permanente should take everyone they have in their database and try to recreate the study and see if they get a different result. NHS in England, every major institution in the world, because that's what's shocking, Ben, is the fact that not a single major institution or government regulatory agency in the world has ever been able to do the most obvious study known to man, compare vaccinated to unvaccinated children, and show us that the vaccinated are the healthiest among us. I think that's incredible. That should be an easy study to do. And when they say they haven't done it, and then when you see, and I want people, when you watch this movie, think about this. Dr. Marcus Zervos wants to do this study. He seems excited about it. He even admits that in the dinner that you're watching being recorded. But then suddenly he doesn't get the result he's expecting. And then his answer is, it should be out there, but I don't have the guts to do it. I'm burying this thing, essentially. How many other world-renowned scientists did the same thing? Exactly. Because this was the obvious study you should have done to prove that vaccines made us healthier. How many scientists have done this study and then never published it because it goes against the pharmaceutical funding that they're receiving at their university, at their regulatory agency? We'll never know. But what we know now is we have a tool. So go to inconvenientstudy.com, watch it, share it, have the debates with your friends. And I'll say this. I made this movie to be just as absolutely open-minded as I possibly could, just sharing the facts. So many people are writing in. That's what they love about it. It didn't pound me over the head. I handed it to my friend that's a doctor. I've handed it to people that cared about, that thought that only science that would listen to it. And so many people are saying, Del, this movie's doing something I've never seen done. It's really my friend that's a doctor is now sharing it with their friends. It has this ability because it is so obvious what we're talking about. It's a very simple film. It's a very short film. So if everyone watches it, shares it, I think it's going to be a real game changer.
Absolutely, it is. I mean, it's very compelling, and the point that the film that I took away really from watching the film is that the science is it's not fully settled on this topic, and that the vaccination studies out there, they're the ones that are truly flawed.
Yeah.
I mean, they have, we know by William Thompson and the movie Vaxed that, they're tailoring studies to show desired outcomes.
Yeah.
They're doctoring the studies and the data, and the studies we don't have a true unvaccinated versus vaccinated study until this Henry Ford study came out. I mean, this is one of the most profound things that we can be talking about, that this data is sound science, is sound data that shows that there is a vast contrast between the vaccinated and unvaccinated groups. And, Paul Thomas has submitted clinical data to show the same thing. So this is repeatable results. And Dr. Noonan from Pennsylvania, he said the same thing, that the unvaccinated are far healthier in the Amish. And so it's something that we need to be exposing and talking about. And again, looking at vaccinations, there's not a single nutrient in these vaccines. These vaccines, right. And
you're not born hepatitis B, deficient.
Yeah.
Right.
Look at the amounts of aluminum. I mean, I have studies that talk about how, the safe EPA limit of aluminum is like, 0.07 micrograms. And, just in the flu shot, there's 25 or 27 micrograms in every flu shot of aluminum.
There's 250 micrograms in that hepatitis B vaccine given to a day one old baby. We're talking at least 10 times the dangerous amount in an oral dose, by the way. All that science is only on oral feeding to rats. That, it'd be illegal to do a study just feeding aluminum to children and having a placebo group. So they've never even studied aluminum as being injected ever. They've never even done an oral study eating it because they know it's a neurotoxin. They use it. And what's amazing, Ben, I know you know this, they use aluminum to give to rats and animals to study allergies because it makes them allergic. It makes them allergic to any protein you give aluminum. If you give a monkey aluminum and eggs, it will immediately become allergic to eggs. So they can study egg allergies. They do the same thing with nuts in animals and rats. Yet they're putting this in a vaccine and not imagining, what if my baby has some peanut butter in their belly when they got this aluminum? Did that aluminum just train their immune system to say deadly peanut allergy from here on out? These are the things that we're looking at that I think, and again, never been tested. The safety of aluminum, everything we know is in animal studies, and it tells us this stuff is incredibly toxic and dangerous for human beings, and we're injecting 10 times the rate of an oral study into a day 1 old baby. It's absolute madness.
It is absolutely madness. And so again, I think it's so important that we get this information out to the people. We talk about these things, and it's not easy to talk about these things. And I hope that the Henry Ford gentleman, I pray he gets the courage to do so. I mean, I can't help but think of Martin Luther King Jr. say that the ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in times of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenge and controversy. I mean, this man is I literally looked at my wife and I said, that man is a weasel of a man. He's afraid to publish this. He has an opportunity to really save lives, to help the health of the children with his information. So Dale, I support you. I love the work that you're doing. I'm thankful to be standing in the gap with you. One more time, let's put a plug in for the movie, where we can find it, where we can watch it, where we can support you and help get the word out.
And inconvenientstudy.com has everything. It has the study itself. It has the film, all of it free. It has the debate that's going on about this. Of course, I always do a weekly talk show called thehighwire.com. Also, our socials at the Highwire or at Del Bigtree. You can see all the things I'm doing. But right now, in inconvenientstudy.com. And I'll say this, Ben, we can be upset with Dr. Marcus Zervos as you watch in this film, as he shirks what you can tell he knows is his duty. You can tell he wants to do it, but doesn't have the courage. But, I always think about what Jesus said, let he who is without sin cast the first stone. How many of us are not sharing this film with someone we love, where we could bring the truth to them? We could help them not vaccinate their children anymore, understand why maybe they need to rethink this. But we're afraid to have a difficult conversation. We're afraid that that'll mess up the Thanksgiving dinner. So, Ben, I would say a lot of us are suffering from that lack of courage that Zervos is showing. He's human. He's afraid. He wants to be remembered for having done good things, and he's done good things in his life. But so have we all. And we've got to ask ourselves, how important is this? And how badly do we want to have the majority and the power to understand the truth right now? It's going to take every one of us to develop the courage we need to use this window of opportunity to change our world and make it better for the future of our kids. Because if we don't, on those last days that we're staring at the ceiling and we're about to pass, I don't ever want to look at the ceiling and say, I should have done more. I could have done more.
Right.
I haven't left a better world for my children. We have this opportunity right now to do what's right. And so I hope every one of us will take up that mantle and become warriors. You're needed now for this moment, right now, for this issue. I really believe the health of our species is hanging in the balance. Our future as a free nation is hanging on the balance on this issue. I hope everyone will warrior up and do what's right.
Amen. Edmund Burke said the only thing for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing.
That's
Again,
it.
We have an opportunity right now. We must get in the fight, be proactive, share this film, support the film, share it with a friend. Have that. I pray that God gives you that boldness and that courage to share, to speak out, and to stand in the gap. We need you, but we must be encouraged. Sam Adams said it doesn't take a majority to prevail, but rather an irate, tireless minority keen on setting brush fires of freedom in the minds of the people. And we are that irate, tireless minority, and the tides are turning. Dale, God bless you, my friend. I'll be praying for this film, that the word gets out there. I'll be sharing this film. I already have. I've already supported this film. I'm going to continue to do so. Thanks, Dale, for being on the show.
Thank you, Ben. Take care.
to August of last year, nobody really knew who I was.
There's about 12 people who are producing 65% of anti-vaccine misinformation.
We need to come together as Americans and realize that we have a war at hand here. Right?
Like, dude, how scared of this shit do you have to be, right, to be wearing gloves, a face shield, and mask at this point?
Help us to urge folks and say to them, look, it's time to roll up your sleeve and get the shot.
Chiropractor in Omaha, Nebraska, responsible for 65% of the anti-vaccine misinformation. Put what I say to the test. Just don't write me off as crazy misinformation.
Doctor,
Please bring yourself in order.
600,000 people will die of cancer. 300,000 people will die of obesity this year. When is enough enough?